So, look at this. Okay, so this is Undershaw when it first was built. This is Undershaw around 2013, and this is Undershaw now. So we are in this beautiful building that's been fully restored, and we're going to skip past that to the list. The first up, and the toughest to defend of all, is Jeremy Brett. So we have Bonnie. Tell us a little bit about yourself, Bonnie.
Oh, well, you can read it. I wasn't ready to do that. Basically, I write Sherlock Holmes novels for HarperCollins, and my third one will be coming this fall. The first one was Art in the Blood. The second one was Unquiet Spirits, and a long history in Hollywood as a screenwriter and a producer and actor before that. Fantastic. And you've chosen a very difficult person. Yeah, nobody likes Jeremy Brett, right? I know. This is a tough one.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay, go. All of us who love Sherlock Holmes came to him through different doorways, and mine was at age 10 when I read the entire canon, and followed by Rathbone on TV. Like one of the artists said, that's what was on when I was a kid. This passion has been reignited over and over in the years, and I've fallen in love with Hugh Laurie as House, and Robert Downey Jr. and Benedict Cumberbatch. I love them all, but over and over I find myself returning to Jeremy Brett, because I think he embodied canon. When actors get a script, they look for the little tells that give them the clues to the inner life. So Brett took his straight from canon and used to carry it around the set. Physically, Holmes leaps over sofas, claps his hands in excitement, throws himself to the floor to examine the carpet, growls, shouts, has sudden laughter. Psychologically, Brett conveyed Holmes' sense of the absurd, the disdain for pomposity and idiots, coupled with compassion and an unbreakable code of honor, and great love for his friend. So all that is in the canon, and all that was in Brett's performance. Holmes of the canon is arguably bipolar, manic bouts of energy followed by the depths of despair and depression. But Brett, the actor, found this natural. He was bipolar himself. Holmes's sexuality was a mystery. It's been debated for 130 years. That too was something that Brett embodied. Men and women adore Jeremy Brett as Sherlock Holmes. That he was both handsome and fit the description, including the height, his nose, everything, the elegant clothing and the posture. They make him feel like canon come alive to me. Sherlock Holmes, the legend, is both a hero and he's also a little bit damaged goods. We don't know how or why, but we sense it. And this makes him all the more heroic. Brett himself was the same. No wonder this handsome, brave man has stolen our hearts, at least mine. I argue for Jeremy Brett.
Thank you very much. Fantastic. Now we switch from Undershaw to New York for Richard Ryan. So this is Richard Ryan. So Rich.
Yes.
We have your voice, but we have we can't see you at the moment. That's probably my fault. So.
Is that better?
Okay.
Is that better?
You got Richard yet? Let's have a look. Hey. Richard Ryan from New York. Good evening, sir. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Native New Yorker. Don't let the accent give me away. Devout Sherlockian all my life. And a pastiche, sure.
Okay, fantastic. So, Rich, you're defending Elementary. So tell us about Elementary.
I think Elementary offers a very different Holmes and Watson. And yet, despite the obvious differences, the biggest one being Watson is a woman, I think the show provides viewers with a very human Holmes. He's quirky, he's haunted, he's still socially awkward, and yet he's still gifted with those keen observational and deductional skills. You know, as writers, we choose what to emphasize in our stories. And when you go through the canon, you see different attributes of Holmes shine through in different stories. When you put all those attributes together, you emerge with a very complex human being. And that's what I think Elementary is all about. You know, at its heart, Elementary is nothing more than a new take on two of our beloved characters. But their presence or their changes, I don't think it diminishes the original in any way. In fact, I think it complements it. You know, Elementary is a new take on an old theme, if you will. And I think despite personal preferences, I know there are people that do not like Elementary. I think that the Elementary and the canon can coexist quite nicely. You know, some people have disparaged Elementary as a mere police procedure. The canon is used here in a very different way from the way many other adaptations have used it. The show takes static elements from the canon, the drug use, the violin, the beekeeping, the character names, and it employs those pieces. It wraps its plots around those pieces, if you will. So it's using them in a slightly different manner than perhaps we're used to. Instead of playing the game that Conan Doyle laid out, what Elementary does is it takes the pieces that Conan Doyle was using and offers us an entirely new game. In short, the writing is very tight. The acting, I think, is flawless. And the relationship between Holmes and Watson is perhaps the most human of any of the iterations. By maintaining the core of Doyle's characters, but recasting the finish, I think those who work at Elementary have offered modern audiences not only a series of entertaining tales starring Holmes and Watson, but a very accessible portal to the canon for those looking to learn more about these characters.
That's fantastic. Thanks, Rich. Brilliant. Thank you very much. On to the next one. So who's up next? It's Amy Thomas. Let's switch over to Amy. So we're going to stop that show. Okay, we need to go to the next video. So we're going to go to now Amy. So is Amy in?
Hello.
Okay, so we can hear you, Amy, and
okay.
let's get your video working. Okay, I've clicked ask to start video, Amy.
Okay.
Fantastic. Hey, Amy.
Hello.
So, who are you defending, Amy? But first, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm a member of the Baker Street Babes podcast, and I am the author of the Detective and the Woman series. Book 4, The Detective, the Woman, and the Pirate's Bounty, just came out here at MX a few weeks ago. And also, I have defended this adaptation, Young Sherlock Holmes, before at 221B convention. So I am talking about Young Sherlock Holmes, an excellent film. Ever since Sherlock Holmes was created, people have speculated about the times and aspects of his development that the original canonical stories don't actually address. Notably, Nicholas Meyer's acclaimed The 7% Solution delves very deeply into Holmes's early psyche. The difference in these earlier works in Young Sherlock Holmes is that most were written for adults, while the film's Holmesian universe was imagined very much for a child and early teenage audience. This should actually be seen as an advantage because it has the potential to introduce Holmes to a demographic who may find the stories difficult and may find other Holmesian films and television shows a little bit too adult. The film reimagines the meetings between Holmes, Watson, and Moriarty, yet even while it drastically alters the context of these meetings, it preserves valuable aspects of the characters and relationships. Though he's not yet fully mature, Holmes is the burgeoning and intelligent detective, Watson is his faithful and practical companion, and Moriarty presents as a clever and very exacting opponent. Young Sherlock Holmes does not go remotely too far because it's intended as a beginning. It's an alternate universe. It's like an amuse-bouche that's intended to whet the appetites of young people and introduce them to lifelong Holmesian pursuits.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Amy. Right. Okay, so next up is Dan Andriaco. So let's go find Dan. So we've unmuted Dan so we can hear Dan. So Dan, are you there?
I am at my post.
You are at your post. So we've just got to, oh, hey, and we've got you on video too. So hey, Dan.
Hi.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Dan.
Well, I am a mystery writer and a Sherlockian mystery writer. And I've also written a lot of essays about Sherlock Holmes. And I'm the leader of a science society called the Tankerville Club of Cincinnati, and my title there is Most Scandalous Member. So I think that's all you need to know about me.
Okay, great. Let's go on. Who are you defending?
Basil Rathbone. If you ask Sherlockians of a certain age, including mine, how they first encountered Sherlock Holmes, a large number will say that it was through watching Basil Rathbone movies on TV. For me, it was a different story. I read much of the canon before I ever saw a Basil Rathbone movie when I was a preteen. And when I did see those first Basil Rathbone movies on TV, I was shocked at the imbecilic Watson and the non-canonical plots. So my love of Rathbone's Holmes has nothing to do with nostalgia. I think his interpretation is the best for the following reasons. First, he looks like Sherlock Holmes. That is, he looks like those iconic Sidney Paget illustrations. Second, he sounds like Sherlock Holmes, and that's why the other actors who took over the part from him on radio tried to sound like him with a great deal of success. And that's why his voice is the voice of Sherlock Holmes in The Great Mouse Detective, which you'll hear about later. Third, he acts like Sherlock Holmes. That is, he is, by turn, hyperactive, moody, superior, sardonic, didactic, supremely confident, and at times even self-critical. Those are all characteristics of the Holmes we know from the sacred writings. And unlike some authors, actors who assume the role after him, Rathbone, in my opinion, never overplays the part. I think he gets it just right. But I'll leave the final word to the great Vincent Sterrett. He wrote in the 1960 edition of The Private Life of Sherlock Holmes that Rathbone, quote, has given us a believable and unforgettable Holmes. And I say that more than half a century later, Basil Rathbone's Holmes is still unforgettable.
Thanks a lot, Dan. Fantastic. So, right. So who is up next? It is Derek. So let's find Derek. So Derek Belanger. So unmuting Derek. Trying to unmute Derek.
Yeah, it should be good. Should be good now. Hello?
Yeah. Hey, Derek.
Hey, how are you?
How you doing, young man?
Good. How are you, man?
I'm good. Well, a little bit technologically out this evening, but we are here now and we're live. So tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, I'm Derek Belanger. I'm a Sherlock Holmes author. I've written a number of books and short stories. I also am co-owner of the publishing company Belanger Books, which I run with my brother Brian. We're the only publisher licensed to release the original and new Solar Ponds books. And I've had a couple of #1 bestsellers as well. You can see the list there on that screen.
Fantastic. So who are you defending tonight?
I am going to defend the wonderful program, Miss Sherlock. All right. So, Miss Sherlock is a delightful modern-day twist on Sherlock Holmes. Like the show Sherlock, the setting is updated to the modern day, but the creators of Miss Sherlock go a step further and put their adventures in 21st century Tokyo. They put the language of the program in Japanese, and they make the main characters female. The premise is that Dr. Wato Tachibana, or Wato-san, has returned from volunteering in the war in Syria. Though the doctor was not hit by a Giselle bullet, she carries the emotional scars of seeing conflict. She is introduced to Sarah Sherlock Shelley Futaba after Wado-san witnesses a man murdered by a device which explodes inside him. By the end of their first case, Miss Sherlock and Wado-san are flatmates under the care of their landlord, Mrs. Hatana. I have to give a shout out to Miss Hatana. She is one of the best on-screen Mrs. Hudson characters I've ever seen. She is funny, kind, and can instantly see how much Sherlock and Wado-san need each other, despite the fact that the two, because of their personalities, drive each other crazy. Miss Sherlock currently consists of only 8 episodes. In the beginning, each episode is a self-contained mystery, but there is an overarching story which is resolved in the final episode. While this show is a very unique take on the great detective and his, or should I say her, Boswell, I think that is primarily why it works so marvelously, and why the show does not go too far. We have fresh takes on the Holmes and Watson characters, as well as on Inspector Lestrade, here Inspector Raymond, who is a much more understanding and supportive character of Sherlock than the inspector in the canon. We also get Mycroft acting as the Japanese government, and of course we get a villain in the form of a Moriarty character. This is a show that will, in my opinion, bring new readers to the canon, not push people away. We have some versions of canonical stories such as The Sussex Vampire and The Noble Bachelor, which are updated, and in my opinion, in the case of The Sussex Vampire, it's improved upon. The fact that I reread each of the original stories after viewing their episodes speaks volumes on how this series can and will bring readers back to Doyle's writing. I highly recommend Miss Sherlock to all Sherlockians, whether they be strict canonists or open to different interpretations of the detective. I assure you, you will not be disappointed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Fantastic. So, who's up next? We have one of our resident presenters. So I'm going to open up to Stepping Stones. So we're unmuting the Stepping Stones room.
Yes, hi. Can you hear me?
We can hear you. We're going to see you in a
perfect.
second. So we want the video as well. So ideally, we can have the video.
I'm pressing a button.
You're pressing the button.
I have pressed the button.
Yay!
Yes,
Okay.
I have pressed the button. Yay! Hi.
Janina, tell
Hi.
us a little bit about yourself.
So yes, I also write Sherlock Holmes novels, but I write about Mycroft Holmes. And with me, he is an agent in the Secret Service. But my day job is not a writer. I'm a game designer, and I work as a virtual and augmented reality lead in a company in Zurich. So I live just about an hour from Reichenbach Falls, which is really nice. And today I'm going to be defending the Private Life of Sherlock Holmes movie by Billy Wilder. And it is not only one of my favorite adaptations, but also one of my favorite movies because it is just so funny. I find a lot of things to laugh about, lots of really funny scenes in the canon, and I think the movie captures that tone really well from the beginning. And I especially like that it has a very strong woman character besides Irene Adler, who can hold her own against Sherlock, which develops very well in the whole movie and shows them playing off against each other, even though you only really see it in the end when the whole thing gets revealed. The movie also explores Holmes and Watson's sexuality, very funny in the beginning in the ballet scene, if some of you have seen the movie, but also throughout the movie, always in context with Gabrielle. Of course, what I like, it gives Mycroft a very active role, played by Christopher Lee, who plays him very, a bit more dynamic than in the canon, let's say it like that. But it shows that even he is fallible. So everyone, what I like about the movie is that everyone fails in the movie. So Watson fails because he has failed to see Gabrielle for what she really is, the German spy who tries to get the plans for the submarine by trying to get Sherlock to solve the mystery for her, which he does. So he also fails. He gets played by the woman. And Mycroft fails, even though he sees her for the spy she is. He doesn't take into account Queen Victoria's dislike for warships. So in the end, he also gets cut down. And of course, Gabrielle fails because she doesn't get the plans and all her spy colleagues die in the end. So I feel this is a very human layer on top of the canon adventure, like loosely adapts, which makes everything feel very warm and with more depth than I'm missing from a lot of adaptations, which I'm seeing in more modern adaptations like Elementary now, which is also one of my favorites. But I'm missing it from a lot of classic adaptations. Yes.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Okay, so let's see who's up next. It is, I wonder who Mary Platt is going to be defending. What do you think, guys? Let's have a look. Let's find Mary. So Mary, are you there? Can we hear you, Mary? Oh, we can't hear you just yet.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. So we're just going to spotlight your video. So hopefully everybody can see you now. So I can pretty much guess who you're going to be defending here. So there's a bit of stalker activity here, yeah? You were stalking him.
Well, I met him a few years ago, and we had that wonderful picture taken. So he was very gracious. But yes, I'm going to be defending the Robert Downey Jr. movies. A little bit about me. I am out here. Hello from Los Angeles, by the way. I'm out here. I direct the Hilbert Museum of California Art, but I'm a Sherlockian going back probably to my high school days. And I have written several essays in a couple of books from the Baker Street Babes and forthcoming from the Studious Scarlets. So that's a little bit about me anyway, working on a book about the RDJ movies.
Fantastic.
So the main critiques that we hear about the Downey movies is that they're too much action adventure, not enough deduction, that Downey plays Holmes as a Victorian superhero. And I would argue there's actually a lot of deduction in the movies. And really, what's wrong with Sherlock Holmes in an action adventure framework? There's plenty of action in the canon. There are things blowing up, fisticuffs and fights. So the movies are just taking what's already there and amping it up with gorgeous production values. And really, there's a reason that Conan Doyle called his stories adventures and not mysteries. They are adventures. There's a lot of action. And sure, Downey may play a superhero in some other movies, but he's an Oscar-nominated actor of immense range, and he gives us a fascinating Holmes. He's a frazzled bohemian, disheveled and on edge. And he gives us the boxing, the martial arts, and the disguises. It's also one of the great Holmes-Watson pairings on screen. Jude Law's Watson is capable, he's smart, he's a complete partner in solving the cases. The two have great chemistry, let's be honest. They've flown right past bromance into old married couple. It's a delightful pairing. They bicker, they fight, and they get the job done. There's an excellent supporting cast, everything from Mrs. Hudson to Clarkey to especially Stephen Fry's Mycroft. So can Sherlock Holmes be a blockbuster action adventure? I argue that it definitely can be. It's a modern version to entice a whole new generation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Fantastic. Absolutely fantastic there. Thanks. Thanks, Mary. And let's see who is up next. So we have Mattias. So let's find Mattias. And let's open up Mattias's video. So let's have a look. Mattias, you are now unmuted, sir. And I've asked to start the video. So hopefully we can see you in a moment. A bit of a time lag there. Mattias, can you hear us? Okay, so we're having a bit of a trouble connecting to Mattias. I think that we may have been, considering who he's defending, we may have been sabotaged. Right, okay, Mattias.
Hello.
Where are you dialing in from, Mattias?
Outside Stockholm, Sweden.
Stockholm in Sweden. Okay, we moved from LA to Sweden just like that. Isn't that amazing? Right, so tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm the author of a non-fiction book called From Holmes to Sherlock, the story of the men and women who created an icon. And, well, they won some awards and got shortlisted for some others. And that's about everything you can say about me. No.
Fantastic. Well, you just went so easy with this. Bonnie had the tough Jeremy Brett, but you went easy with Holmes and Watson.
Yes.
So tell us why Holmes and Watson didn't go too far.
Well, you asked me if the film Holmes and Watson went too far. Of course it did. That's the whole idea. This is not a Sherlock Holmes film. This is a silly Sherlock Holmes film. The sillier, the better. That's my motto. Nowadays, we have gone too far in making Holmes a non-silly character. I mean, back in the 1890s and early 20th century, silliness was a natural part of the Holmes' success. And what made Holmes a popular culture icon. I mean, the numerous parodies moved Holmes from literature to popular culture and kept reminding people about the detective even when there were many years between the original stories. Original Holmes and silly Holmes were dependent of each other, and they still are in children's books, cartoons, all over popular culture. If you kill one, you will kill both. That's what's happening when people are spreading those false rumors about mass walkouts and such. A movie is killed before potential viewers have even had a chance to see if they like it. You don't have to love this film, but I certainly did. The film has a lovely Watson, an unexpectedly believable Holmes, and it's a warm film with plot twists that are great in its own silly boundaries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So, on to the next adaptation, and the next panelist is David Marcum. So we are going to go and unmute David, and I think David's webcam is not working, so we're just going to get the audio. So David, can we hear you?
Yes, can you hear me?
We certainly can, sir. So David, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm a civil engineer. I live in East Tennessee in the United States. I discovered Sherlock Holmes when I was a boy in the mid-1970s, and since then I've collected several thousand traditional pastiches, which is my interest. In 2008, I started writing pastiches, and now I've written over 40 of them. And in 2015, I kind of became an amateur Sherlockian editor, basically because I wanted to encourage more new traditional stories, because I wanted to read more new traditional stories. And that's what I'm here to defend today, because that's kind of, to me, the basis underneath all of the other adaptations.
So you're defending traditional pastiches, and you're going to pick on a few particular ones to defend.
Right. There's a list there on the left of many that are traditional pastiche writers, but I picked just to focus on one, Dennis Smith, who started doing it before the rest of us did. So the original Sherlockian canon is the foundation for all that came after. It appeared intermittently from 1887 to 1927. And during those 40 years, there were only a pitifully few 60 adventures that were released to the public. And so many others were simply not published, or they were placed in Watson's tin dispatch box. Since those early years when the first literary agent, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, was working with Watson to publish Holmes's adventures, there have been many others who have also brought us additional cases beyond those original 60. And what a great thing that is for those of us who aren't satisfied with just the canon or with studying just those same few dozen tales. Some of us want more adventures and more examples of exactly why Holmes is truly the greatest detective of them all. And how can that, when you're talking about the original Holmes, be going too far? In 1974, Nicholas Meyer brought us the 7% solution, which started a new golden age that hasn't really faded since. And since then, there have been a vast number of new Watsonian narratives about Holmes, along with many others that aren't related by Watson at all. We have stories narrated by Mycroft Holmes and Sherlock Holmes himself, and others that tell us about Irene Adler or Professor Moriarty, or even more obscure figures like Dr. Mortimer. There are many more pastiche writers in the modern era than can be listed, some who have only pulled one or two adventures from Watson's 10 dispatch box, and others who are very prolific. And on the left of the screen is an incomplete list of those who have written quite a few. And let's see, I could talk about all of them and all the stories that they brought to us, but as I can only pick one today, I chose to focus on Dennis Smith to represent us. He started writing his excellent adventures in 1982, which was 2 years before Jeremy Brett's Granada episodes added new fuel to the Holmes fire. Since that time, he's written 43 pastiches, and they've been published in a variety of books and magazines, as shown on the right. The stories that he relates have excellent and mysterious plots, but even better is that they feel exactly as if they could have appeared in the Strand. Dennis's knowledge of the subject and of England and the times, and his passion to get things right, shows in every tale. And like the rest of us who write traditional pastiches, he's interested in furthering our knowledge of the lives of Holmes and Watson, the originals, the baseline for all other versions. For people like me who want to read and know more about the originals, one cannot do any better than to read the works of the people shown here on the screen, including Dennis Smith. I want to encourage all of you to seek out the works by these authors, and you won't be disappointed. And thank you very much.
Thanks, David. That's wonderful. Okay, so who's up next? So we go from the US all the way over to the other side of the world for Jay Ganguly. Jay, where are you talking to us from? It's very late at night, early morning.
Well, it's 1:45 a.m. and I am in India, in the eastern part of India.
Fantastic. And tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, if you go around to Sherlockian gatherings, especially in London or New York, you will find this crazy brown female walking around. That's usually me.
Fantastic, fantastic. So, who are you defending tonight?
BBC Sherlock.
Fantastic. Tell us why BBC Sherlock didn't go too far.
Well, there really isn't any need to defend BBC Sherlock. Just the popularity says it all. I think it's enough to say that it captures the essence of Sherlock. It feels like Sherlock Holmes. So I have put up some points here, which more or less cover everything I would like to say. I will add this. Sherlock Holmes, the original, was a modern man of the late 19th and early 20th century. And BBC Sherlock is a modern man of the 21st century. So that feel carries forward from that era to the current modern period. Both were great men with a great companion, Dr. Watson, who was more than a mere sidekick or a hapless narrator. Also, BBC Sherlock, with its subtle canonical references, pays a beautiful salute to the original canon. And it is important to note that while other detectives solve mysteries, the original Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson, as well as BBC Sherlock and John, have adventures. They are not just puzzle solvers. That pretty much says it all. Most importantly, BBC Sherlock comes pre-approved by the Sherlock Holmes Society of London. You cannot ask for a better validation than that for any Sherlock Holmes show. And that's all I have to say. I think I have crossed 90 seconds.
Yeah, and you need to go home and get some sleep. 1 o'clock in the morning. Thank you so much for joining, Jay.
Thank you very much, Steve. It's been a pleasure.
Okay, so let's see who's up next. Okay, so we move on to Stephen Philip Jones. So let's see if we can find Stephen. And we're unmuting Stephen, and let's see if we can get some video from Stephen as well, or are we just on audio, Stephen?
I think you got me.
We got you, and we got video too. So where are you talking from?
Well, this is going to show that I'm the redheaded stepchild of this group. I'm from a trailer park in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Hi, guys.
Yeah, Iowa. Fantastic. So from India to Iowa.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Stephen.
Yeah, like the other folks, I just write a little bit of everything. I write comics, I write graphic novels, I've written a couple of audio dramas, I've written a couple of books.
Fantastic. And who are you defending
right
tonight?
Yeah, we're doing the Hound, the Baskervilles here. I know some other folks, yeah, they're smarter than me. They wrote down what they're going to say. I didn't, so I'm going to try not to channel Count Arthur Strong here, and I'll get this out. Doing the Hound of the Baskervilles, the Hammer films. The first thing I look at if something like hasn't gone too far, I look back to an old Hollywood screenwriter. His name was Nunnally Johnson, and he asked when he was adapting something if it was dramatically right. What he meant by that was you didn't violate the source material. And I don't see where this film does that. It's still at the essence, the mystery of the Hound of the Baskervilles, an outsider, a black sheep of the family is trying to take over the whole family by eliminating, the people in front of him. That still takes place. We still have Sherlock Holmes. We had one of the earliest authentic Sherlock Holmeses. We had the first authentic Watson. The movie is still a gothic. It's still a gothic mystery. Things I look for to see if something is dramatically right. Does it echo any part of the original novel? This one does. I mean, just one example. You can usually catch it in the dialogue. There's a part in the movie where Holmes is talking to a character called Bishop Franklin, and he mentions him. He goes, Bishop, I'm sitting here fighting evil as surely as you do. And of course, early in the novel, Holmes makes a comment that in a modest way, he's been combating evil as well. So there's still that thought running through the whole book. So I feel like in that way, and in others, I only have 90 seconds. I can't go through more examples. But in others, it is dramatically right. The thing that I love about this really was the first time we got Watson. Like a lot of Holmes fans, I do like Nigel Bruce's Watson, but it's not Arthur Conan Doyle's. This one is that doctor, that occasional man of action, stiff upper lip character. He's dependable. He's intelligent. M.J. Eliot, a really wonderful Sherlockian, called him the poshest Watson of all, and I think I would agree with that. Peter Cushing's Holmes. Peter Cushing was famous for being a Sherlockian. He added a lot of things to the movie that were authentic. He wanted to make sure that the sets were, the Baker Street set was authentic as he could be. The robe that he wears is mouse color like it is in the story. He does little things like writes notes on his shirt cuffs. His attitude towards people is the same as Holmes treats them. So all those things are authentic, I feel. The one thing that I would have to say the most, when I was doing some research, I was watching the movie again and reading about it. When the film came out in 1958, of course, it had plenty of reviews. And I came across one by the Sherlock Holmes Society, and I have to go by it. And what they said was that this was the greatest Sherlock Holmes movie ever made. So I have to assume that the Sherlock Holmes Society believes that. It must be, didn't go too far. It was an authentic movie. So that's how I'm defending that. Try not to look too nervous here. Sorry, folks, but that's how I would defend this movie.
Thank you very much, Stephen. That's absolutely brilliant. Thanks, guys. Right. So who's next up? So we're back to the Stepping Stones room now. So I'm going to go back to the one of the presenters who's actually here with us in the room. So you're now unmuted, I think, and you're now spotlighted as well.
Video.
Hey, fantastic. So, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Of crime and fantasy and science fiction and anything else I can think of to write, really. I'm relatively new to the world of Sherlock Holmes writing, although I've been a fan for years, but only started writing Sherlock Holmes stories within the last year. Also, crucially, for the adaptation I'm defending today, I'm mainly a full-time parent looking up to two young children who I want to introduce to Sherlock Holmes. And what better way to do so than with the Great Mouse Detective?
Fantastic. So let's dive straight into that.
Yeah. And how do you introduce Sherlock Holmes to a young audience? Simplifying or dumbing down Conan Doyle's stories just doesn't work. It doesn't do justice to the character. You need a new and fitting challenge. The client in this story may be a child and the plot revolves around toys, but the Great Mouse Detective opens with a violent kidnapping. It's a crime, it's not a childish game. However, this takes place in the mouse world, and our detective is Basil and not Holmes. And this is the film's masterstroke, in my opinion. It makes no attempt to alter the canon. Instead, the shadows of Holmes and Watson are seen in Baker Street, while Basil goes on his adventures below them. The film feels authentically Holmesian, partly because it's set in Victorian London. From the hansom cabs in Foggy Street to the final confrontation at Big Ben, we recognise this setting as where a Holmes story should take place. The portrayal of our detective is similarly true to Conan Doyle. In Basil's first scene, we see that he is a master of disguise, makes amazing deductions, and uses scientific methods. These abilities, as well as fighting prowess and a sense of adventure, are displayed throughout the film and give a rounded sense of the character being the same as Conan Doyle's Holmes. Every Holmes needs his Watson, and Watson is portrayed as loyal and compassionate. The growth of the friendship between the two characters is a vital part of the film's success. Lastly, we have a ruthless villain. From Ratigan's casual murder of his own minion to his rage in the final confrontation, it is clear at every stage of this film that there is real jeopardy for our detective to face. Only the greatest of detectives could hope to defeat him. So to conclude, this is a charming family film with a surprising depth and is a perfect way to introduce Sherlock Holmes to new generations.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Before we go on to the final presentation of the evening, we're actually going to go over to a surprise extra panelist. So if I cancel the spotlight video here, we're actually going to go back to the US because at the very last minute, we have somebody who wants to defend an additional adaptation. So if we cross to the US, and is Thomas, Thomas, are you on the line?
I am indeed.
Fantastic. So sneaking you in at the last moment, Thomas, who would you like to defend?
Well, we're going to talk about a very strange adaptation that just came out, but in the Pokemon universe, if anybody has children like I do, and or young, which I am not, it is a gaming universe. So this is an adaptation of a game, which, by the way, was the most successful game adaptation in the film ever made so far. But so we're going to talk about Detective Pikachu. And this is a little bit of a strange one. The reason I wanted to talk about it, just like the gentleman before me, I have children. I think anytime you adapt a creature, it was adapted into a creature, a character, you do two things. You modernize it and or transform it into something fresh and original for a new audience, and you're introducing it to a new generation, whether we like it or not. Unfortunately, Sherlock Holmes is a Victorian creation, and sometimes kids today they don't know what that is and or don't care, and so you have to slowly or slyly find a way to introduce these older characters. Like I found him as a child in libraries when I was looking for cool ghostly adventures and mysteries, and my librarian said, "Hey, I've got just the thing for you, Sherlock Holmes." But one thing I wanted to talk about here, this was a little bit of a strange adaptation because it didn't directly adapt one of the mysteries. It is not Sherlock Holmes, but it adapted the symbology. We've got Pikachu, which is a character in another universe, running around with a deerstalker hat. And it did something nice that I think has been touched on a few times, just like the Great Mouse Detective, you know, being a totally different adaptation, an animal cartoon adaptation, or which I haven't heard mentioned here tonight, some of the other, you know, adaptations like Star Trek Next Generation. We had an android who did quite well playing Sherlock Holmes several times. But often, I think one of the best things we have is a symbol. And one of the things I love about Sherlock Holmes, he's become so universal that you can never repeat a tale. You can remove every bit of any of the mysteries themselves. You can remove the man himself. You can remove the name Sherlock Holmes. And if you have even an outline, like a silhouette of this person with a deerstalker hat or with a pipe, you instantly get the shorthand of what mystery is. And I think that's what they did here. You have an instantaneous shorthand for this entire new generation of kids that love cartoons and love games, that are playing Pokemon and may have never been introduced to a British author from another century. But yet this character of theirs has a deerstalker on, and it introduces the entire idea of mystery to them. And I think that alone is all that we're after. That's the key. All the rest can follow. All the details can follow. And that's why I was nominating this just as a totally fresh adaptation, a very now thing that is totally different than anything else before.
Thank you very much, Thomas. That's absolutely brilliant. Okay, so we're on to Catherine. So Catherine is in the room as well. So I need to go back to the Stepping Stones room one more time. And we've unmuted the room.
Hello?
Yes, we can hear you. Just trying to get the video now. Get the video.
Yep.
There we go. And we can stop the video.
Yep. Hi.
Fantastic. So good evening, Catherine. Thank you so much for coming down in person here to Undershaw. Tell us a little bit about...
Well, I'm a librarian. I work at the Westminster Libraries, where a small part of my job is maintaining the Sherlock Holmes and Sir Arthur Conan Doyle collection. I'm also Joint Honorary Secretary of the Sherlock Holmes Society of London and write a lot for various Sherlockian books, articles about the stories and about the history of them.
Fantastic. And who are you defending tonight?
I'm defending Douglas Wilmer, the original BBC series. It was redolent with atmosphere. The 1950s feel to the direction and camera work, and the fact that it was shot in black and white gives it the feel of Paget's illustrations, right from the lantern slide style opening credits. Exteriors were shot on location when the docks were still working docks and dowdy villas awaited demolition. Horses and carts were still on the streets. Wilmer approached the part intelligently, always going back to Conan Doyle's texts for illumination and rewriting scripts when they strayed too far from the originals. He paid minute attention to detail. He conveyed thinking with subtle facial expressions, in turns dreamy and alert. Watch his reaction to the ordeal poison in The Devil's Foot, all done with facial expression revealing his horror. He had no need of psychedelic imagery. He was supported by a cast of well-respected actors and Nigel Stock's solid, reliable Dr. Watson. You believed in their friendship. Wilmer thought his Holmes somewhat harsh and unsympathetic, that he possibly overstretched the dark side of Holmes, but he found humour in the dark shadows. He captured the essence of the man, the look, the voice, the authority. He was razor sharp, 100% on the ball. Anything less would simply not be Holmes. He had to be, and was masterful, incisive, dryly witty, and in command of the events. Wilmer was and is Holmes to a whole generation of British Sherlockians. As the Baker Street Journal put it when the DVDs finally became available, quite possibly the best and most accurate Sherlock Holmes ever. Or as another US fan wrote, the only actor who ever got it right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's wonderful. Thank you. So, what we're going to do now, guys, is we're going to shut off the video next door for a moment because we are preparing for a really special event. The guy that you're going to see now has been described by many, including myself, as the closest thing that you can get to Sherlock Holmes that alive today. His name's Ben Cardle, and as he's getting ready, we will just go forward on the slides, so hopefully you can still see the slide. A little summary from me, from everybody here at Undershaw. In case you haven't guessed it, the whole reason we've done this event is we believe that all Holmes is good Holmes. And what we're trying to show with this event is that any adaptation that brings more people to the canon and generates more Sherlock Holmes fans is a good thing. Whether it's Jeremy Brett, whether it's Pokemon, Sherlock Holmes is the greatest character ever. It holds the world's record for the most portrayed character on screen. However, I'm not going to talk for the fans. The fans can vote. From 9 o'clock this evening on the Great Sherlock Holmes Debate Facebook page, let us know your opinion. You'll get a link to a list of all of the adaptations that you've heard about this evening and a series of checkboxes. If you feel that any of the adaptations cross the line, then just click that checkbox. There's a special checkbox at the bottom though, and it says, all good. And we hope you just tick that box, but it's up to you. If there's anything you feel went over the line, then you vote. The vote will be open from 9 o'clock this evening, UK time, through to the 31st of May, and we'll then publish the results.